Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to today's episode of Worst ASMR Video You've Ever Heard in Your Life. I said it before and I'll say it again, I've been waiting for this construction crew to finish their stupid work for days now, but they work all day long and they make noise. So I'm gonna have to endure it, I have been, and you're gonna have to endure it too. So I do wanna apologize in advance for that. Now before we begin this comparison, I'd really appreciate it if you go down below, leave a like, please subscribe, and ring that notification bell for upcoming videos. You know I upload every Friday. The channel's finally starting to, pick up some speed, pick up some traction, and I'd really appreciate it if you help me get up there, become better known, and help me reach good heights. I'd really appreciate it. Anyways, let's jump right in. So this bad boy right here needs no introduction. It's a legend. It is a staple in the audiophile community. The Sennheiser HD600s. I've been listening to these for years. You've probably been listening to these for years, or a variation of them, the 650s, the 6XX. You know them, you love them, or you just straight up don't because they're not your cup of tea. But they are the cup of tea of many people. They are reference. Or at least they have been for a good amount of time now. Has that changed recently? Well, you'd be shocked. Anyways, these are the Sennheiser HD560S. Now, many people were hyping these and saying, my goodness, these are some of the best work Sennheiser has done in a long time. They are very, very neutral. These are reference right here. And I told myself, really? Well, then you know I gotta try them out. You know I have to try these out because I gotta compare them to my boys. So, here we are. Let's not waste any more time, let's go ahead and just jump right into it. Now just to be clear before we do begin, the HD600 featured in today's video are my personal pair, which means the pre-2019 original model. Now as far as the contents are concerned, as you could expect from a step up within a company's product line, the HD600 does offer a tad more than the HD560S. Both come with a headphone, DOI, a cable, an adapter, the instruction booklet / warranty info, and a box. Now the cable for the HD560S is a 2.5mm tip ring sleeve twist and lock to 1/4 inch tip ring sleeve cable, while the HD600's cable is a dual 2-pin to 3.5mm tip ring sleeve cable. Something to note here, the HD560's cable's thickness is about as thick as the HD600's cable and is less flexible too. The adapters are different too. The HD600 offer the more traditional 3.5mm to 1/4 inch tip ring sleeve adapter, while the HD560S offer a 1/4 inch to 3.5mm tip ring sleeve adapter. So you've got the opposite going on. I have no idea why they chose to do this, but they chose what they chose. Now the box for the HD600 is a fancier type of package, offering the cardboard outer shell, which has been dusty because it's been on my bookshelf for years now. I apologize for the snow, just pretend it's snow. And an inner box which has served as my cans display / storage box since the day I received them. Just an extra luxury that you do get for purchasing the pricier headphone. Now on the flip side, you do see that the HD560S's box is the newer packaging with a more, a brighter picture, the headphone sitting on a white table, but it is just cardboard. There's nothing special going on here. Now I personally think that's a very good move on behalf of Sennheiser, because the less luxuries and extras that they pack into a headphone, the more value and performance they can pack into it so that you get more for your dollar, or peso, or euro, whatever you're paying in. Now let's jump into build quality here. Now the two headphones weigh about the same. Both are incredibly light, mostly due to the materials utilized. That said, the HD600s offer a higher quality plastic and do feature more metal within the build. Particularly the size adjustment mechanism and the grills. The HD560s are mostly made of plastic as well, but are made of a cheaper type of material. They feature metal in the grills, and that's about it. Now something to point out real quick, the HD600s were made in Ireland, while the HD560S were made in China. On both of these headphones, the ear pads are made out of a velour that doesn't really feel great on hand, but do not disturb me when actually wearing these. Now the padding on the HD560S are made of the same type of velour as well, while on the HD600s it's more of a spongy foam type of material. Now, as you all know, the cable on the HD600s is my absolute favorite of all time. It is light and thin, so it barely feels like it's there. The cable on the HD560S on the flip side is, well, it's about as thick as the HD600's cables combined. It also holds its shape more than the HD600 does, so using it is not as pleasant as it should be. However, I wouldn't be in any rush to buy a replacement cable for the HD560S anytime soon. Although both of these headphones are open back headphones, the grills on the HD600s are more open, remarkably more open, allowing the driver to be seen more easily. Furthermore, the HD560S also feature a veil between the driver and the grille to protect it from dust more effectively, so it's just up to you to what you prefer. Now let's jump into the comfort department. I'll start off by saying that neither of these are very comfortable out of the box. Both have a very powerful vise that requires you to either wear them extensively to break them in, or use a stretching method to ease your suffering. Now, because the HD600s are made of a more premium plastic and feature metal on the size adjustment mechanisms, bending these to loosen the clamp force is simpler. With the 560S, however, I would recommend being extra careful when attempting this method, since the size adjustment mechanism is also made of plastic. On my pair, I did hear a slight creak and felt like stopping before I, potentially broke them. Thankfully, I didn't break them. I have seen no issues on them either. They are perfectly fine, but I did want to point that out. Now, neither of these are comfort kings, I'll admit, but I must say the HD560S did loosen up a lot faster than the HD600s have, and faster than I recall the HD6XX doing as well. That said, the pressure felt from the HD560S is mostly around the upper area of the pads, while on the HD600 it is far more centralized into probably, well, like I said, the center, and then less around the upper areas, and a little bit less than that in the lower areas. So like 3, 2.7, 2.5. I don't even know why I chose 3, but I guess I like 3. Now, as far as amplification goes, on the XXX, good God, on the THX AAA 789, I can run the HD600 at around 10 AM on gain 3 in single-ended. But for the sake of being fair, I will compare both on gain 2. So on gain 2, I run the HD560S at around 10:30 to 11 AM, while I'd run the HD600 at around 11 to 11:30 AM. So it's really not a big difference between the two. Of course, with the HD600s, you do have the advantage of choosing whether you'd prefer running them single-ended or balanced with an XLR cable or a Pentacon. Since the HD560S are one-sided, you can only run those in single-ended. So let's jump into the sound. Let's start off with the bass. With electronic bass, the HD600 offer more mid-bass and have the livelier of the two bass responses. However, the HD560S do seem to have better bass extension. So I'll give you an example here. Kyoto by Skrillex featuring Syra. The HD600 offer more warmth, reproducing the bigger bass of the two. The HD560S are more capable of reaching those low bass notes that you can't really hear, but you can feel. Its bass response, however, is more sterile and clean by comparison. Another example, Zealots of Stockholm by Childish Gambino. At the 20-second mark, the subtle pulsating bass note playing in the background is slightly more audible on the HD600, but can be slightly felt more on the HD560S. Now at the minute 34 mark, the bass note is more forward on the HD600s, but slightly more textured on the HD560S. It can also be felt a bit more. At the 3:05-minute mark, the bass valley could be heard for about the same length of time on both headphones. However, the HD600 gave it a tad more bloat than the HD560S did. The ascension on the HD600 sounded a bit more like a graph of exponential growth, as opposed to the more linear recovery of the HD560S. Bass guitars are a tad more laid back and lean on the HD560S than they are on the HD600. Now drums. An example, Helena Beat by Foster the People. Drums sound leaner and a tad more crisp on the HD560S. They don't offer a whole lot of slam and do feel a bit thinner by comparison. On the HD600s, the drums sound more impactful and euphonic. So let's put it this way, each sounds like you're listening to a drum that is, let's say, 4 feet tall. However, the drum on the HD600 sounds like it is 6 feet wide, while the HD560s sound like it's 3 or 4 feet wide. Both sound like a natural drum, but the HD600s give it a bit more life and reverb. Now let's jump into the mids. Vocals sound more intimate on the HD600s, hands down. On the HD560S, they're still quite detailed, but they sound about a step or two farther away from you. So, an example, Tank by the Seatbelts. The instruments as a whole sound less congested on the HD560S. What? I hate construction crews. Now, the instruments as a whole sound less congested on the HD560S, while sounding more intimate on the HD600s. If you ask me, I prefer the slightly more spacious sound of the HD560S for this particular track, possibly for brass bands as a whole. Now, the acoustic guitar on the right side can be heard more distinctly on the HD560S because it sounds like it has more room to breathe, more room to exist. Another example, Rightfully by Millie. The string instruments sound cleaner on the HD560S but offer more resolution on the HD600s. I feel like the string bass can get in the way when listening to the HD600, although it does have more growl on the bow when doing a down bow, while it is less obtrusive on the HD560S. Now let's talk about treble. The HD600's treble response sounds far more peaky / unruly than the HD560S's linearity. As a whole, the HD560S possesses a slightly brighter than neutral treble response, but it is quite linear. The HD600 do possess a bit of a peak here and there, with its treble response lying both above and below the HD560S's. So I'll give you an example, Cowboys from Hell by Pantera, particularly from the Best of Pantera album. This one can be quite the coin flip. Cymbals sound more intense on the HD560S, but possess a more silvery timbre on the HD600s. The sibilance region is exactly as cumbersome on either headphone. Overall, the HD600 have the more comfortable treble response in this track, but like I said, it actually varies track by track. I would also like to add here that I do appreciate the timbre of the treble in the HD600s a bit more than the timbre in the HD560S. Not necessarily for the sake of accuracy, but for the sake of enjoyment purposes. And more on that later. Now, as far as the Soundstage is concerned, the HD560S have the HD600 beat, hands down. In terms of width, it's a minute difference. I'm not gonna tell you these are, like canyons and these are like a, narrow alleyway. Well, these might be a narrow alleyway, but these are definitely not canyons, I'll tell you that much. However, the HD560S is extremely capable of utilizing the extra space it's allocated, and it really shows in the music. Combine these two factors and you get a much more spacious environment. While I make it sound like the HD560S are better in Soundstage across the board, that isn't necessarily true. If what you're looking for is a more intimate presentation, the HD600s are much better at providing that. That said, I do feel that the narrowness of the HD600 can be a bit of a detriment regarding its instrument separation. With less space comes less capabilities for separation and distinction, after all. Now, as far as imaging is concerned, if you were expecting endgame performance from a $200 headphone, you're sorely mistaken. That said, HD600s don't necessarily offer endgame imaging performance either. Both are quite good at imaging, but I feel that the HD600s do offer a hair or two of better performance, as to be expected. For example, City to City by Zomboy featuring Bell Humble. At the beginning of the track, there's a sound that pans from left to right, back and forth, then goes from left to middle, then back to left, then continues down its usual path. This was pretty simple to track with both headphones since it isn't that difficult to do. Now another example, Devilman no Uta from Devilman Crybaby. At the minute 42 mark, there are claps near the center image. With endgame headphones like the HD800 and HD800S, I can hear that there is a slight variation as to where these claps lie. It's a slight thing, but it's not always in the exact same spot. They move around within a very close region, but they're always in a slightly different location. Now, I can't track that with either of these two headphones. So, conclusion time. And this one's gonna be, kind of controversial. As an audiophile, the main point of my journey was to find absolute neutrality. When I began, I despised big bass because it detracted from what I had been missing my entire life. Detail, accuracy, and just about every other part of the frequency. The Sennheiser HD560S are the most neutral headphone I have ever heard. They are the most linear too. Granted, they are not 100% neutral, I know that, they're not. They do have that slight elevation in the treble, as well as possessing what many would call a bass-light sound. And I can agree to that to some extent. So here's the problem. As an audiophile and audio enthusiast fighting a headphone. Fantastic. So here's the problem. As an audiophile and audio enthusiast, finding a headphone like this should be a moment of joy and celebration for you. As an enjoyer of music, however, not so much. I feel that for creative purposes, these headphones are an astounding piece of audio gear that will help many. However, I find that their neutrality and lack of color really may turn off a lot of people from having these. As soon as I finished the individual review for these, I started to cleanse my palate, so to speak, by listening to the HD600s, i.e. my reference. To my surprise, the HD600 actually sounded bassy and energetic, like I got back like an element of life that was missing for a good amount of time. Now for my tastes, I find the HD560 best for genres like classical music and jazz, where a flat bass response and slightly brighter tilt can actually provide the recording with a cleaner, more detailed sound. However, they do fall a bit flat when attempting genres like rock and metal, where just a little bit of mid-bass kick and warmth go a long way. With genres like EDM and rap, where bass presence is pretty much provided by the track itself, the HD560S can hold its own. So I think the HD560S should be considered primarily as a professional tool for multimedia purpose, or even for gaming or videos, and can even be considered for some music. However, they simply just do not tick off as many boxes as the HD600s, or even the HD58X, or even the 6XX Jubilee do. They're very, very close though. I really can't complain all that much. I do believe I'll end up keeping the HD560S in my collection. As time goes by, if it starts replacing the HD600 as a more widely adopted golden standard benchmark, I will simply start using these as my reference headphone. But for now, the HD600 remain my king. Anyway, I know this was a long one. Thank you very much for sticking with me. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Leave your questions down below. Don't forget I do have a Patreon, so go ahead and check that out. If you do join, you do get certain advantages, such as watching these videos a day or two in advance, getting to know what's coming out next, and the ability to chat with me on Patreon as well as Discord. I hope this helped your audio purchasing decision, and thank you very much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.